Microsoft Purview Compliance Engineering team. And today I'll also be having a conversation with Akash, who's also extended part of the engineering team, but works with Ernst & Young. And the topic is of an interest, which is EU AI Act, its implications. You navigate in this era of AI. So let me dive directly into the topic. And if you have any questions, as we type in the chat window. Now, even before AI and AI related regulations into existence, most of us are aware of regulations that across the globe, whether it is NIST, whether it is ISO, whether it is the data protection acts, which are with different governments and different authorities. EU AI and other AI regulations are new, but let's look at as any organization goes into the AI journey, what are the challenges, the business challenges they look at in this AI journey? The first one is you're deploying an AI tool in a compliant manner. So if you're building an AI application or you're having an AI application, which is a public application like ChatGPT, Bing, Bard, or you're bringing an enterprise application like M365 Copilot, how do I ensure that it is compliant and it falls and follows all the guidelines and rules specified in the regulations like EUAI and others? The second is, as I'm trying to be compliant and also communicate with my board that I'm compliant, how do I ensure that tracking that compliance and this compliance from regulators keeps on changing as new innovation comes in AI services, as new capabilities come in the applications that you build? The regulators also learn about it, then they come out with regulation, they come out with the new controls. How do I ensure that I am keeping pace with those changes? And not only keeping pace with those changes, I'm also ensuring my applications are compliant to those changes. That's the second challenge most organizations face when they install, deploy, build, or use AI applications. The third is a traditional challenge, but with AI into force, this challenge still remains a challenge, which is point in time assessments. Most of us in the last 20 to 30 years have got used to a point in time assessment. And what I mean by point in time assessment is we do either quarterly audits or 6 monthly audits or 1 year audits. And the frequency of audit is mostly determined by either the regulation or the standard that you're following, or if your board and management is proactive, they probably could kind of tighten this time window. So even if regulation was expecting you to do an audit once a year, there are some organizations which will shorten this window and say, look, we will do 6 months instead of 1 year. Now, the challenge is whether it is a quarterly audit, 6 months audit, 1 year audit, the audit is always point in time. After the audit is done, the next day and the next week and after 2 weeks, the state of your infrastructure could fall out of compliance, out of audit controls. And there isn't a way that you can track on a daily basis that after the audit, are you still in a healthy state or not? And that's more like a traditional industry challenge. Now, if you don't know on a daily basis if you are compliant, then it's a huge blind side for you in the digital world. While on the date of the audit, you know what your state is, but after that, it's a blind side is what the challenge is. The next is a challenge which again comes from a traditional compliance and regulatory world, which is once you pick a regulation, and in our case, we'll pick EUAI as a topic today. As you interpret the regulation, you can't get compliant overnight. Compliance is a journey. You will have to understand control is effort in delegating those controls. Those controls would result into technical actions, process-related actions. It will result into documentation-related work that you will create in the organization. All of this would be traversed over a time, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. It will take some time before you're compliant. During that journey, a lot of communication will happen between IT, compliance officer of the internal auditor, external auditor. Ensure all of this communication happens seamlessly through automated portal flows rather than all these communications occurring on Teams and Zoom and emails, which makes it fairly difficult if you have to kind of communicate all the evidences and report the evidences and audit inferences just on the normal tools. It will be so nice if you have a platform in which you can upload evidence. It will be really nice if you can delegate to different IT and compliance persona, have communication between internal, external auditor in a platform-based, automated-based workflows rather than doing it on the tools like Teams and email. So that's the challenge number 4. The last is, and this last challenge specifically comes as you look into and take a journey on the AI space, which is a lot of customers as they start deploying AI, and I'll differentiate between evaluating AI application in POC and then deploying in production at scale for all the employees. So when you're initially evaluating application, you're evaluating it around test data, you're evaluating the application using a dummy data. It looks so good, so fine. The moment you start deploying true AI application in production, the AI application is going and learning in your digital estate. It goes into your Amazon storage account. It goes into your O365, M365 SharePoints and Teams and OneDrive. It probably goes and reads your transcripts of team calls that just occurred few days back. It goes and kind of even reads the prompts that you're writing on the browser, and then it kind of compiles the data and results and trains itself on it. Now, guess what? Most organizations have data which includes the documents and the Excel files and the PDF and some transcripts, which are dated 10 years, 15 years, 20 years old data. The AI even goes and reads all of that data. So when you deploy AI tools in your organization and you write prompts and you see the responses, sometimes you're amazed at the responses because it's going and learning data which is even old. What if you did not want the AI application to go into data older than 10 years, older than 15 years, older than 7 years? Now, this presents opportunity for you to delete. But look, deleting data in an organization is a fairly risky process because you don't want to delete the data which you will need in future. But at the same time, if you want to deploy the AI and you want AI to be precise, you want AI to be correct, you want AI to be relevant to the responses, then you need to delete data. So then it comes the balance and the tooling. How do I delete stale, rotten data so that AI only looks at the right gives the result? And the second challenge when you deploy an application is, I don't want AI to read my sensitive data. Let's say if you have a sensitive project, let's call it Project Obsidian, and you have research work that goes into that project, and you only want certain people to have access to that data, and you don't want co-pilots, an AI application ability to even go and read the data. Again, there are ways to do that. Like today, we have a DLP policy for that. I'll not go in that direction of solution, but that's a challenge as you go on the AI deployment road, part of the challenges that you will face as you deploy AI. Now, we also did a survey and we pretty much found the results mapping to the challenges that I shared with you, which is most leaders before they deploy AI, the biggest risk they have. And if you see the number 82 on my screen, so 82% of leaders said, look, they are really, really concerned about sensitive data getting copied into the AI apps. You may be writing an email in response to acquisition that your company is proposing. Guess what? You just copied a very, very sensitive data into a co-pilot or into another AI application like GPT. Your intent was give me an email which is written better, but look, it had a lot of sensitive content on what your organization is proposing if the content was related to an acquisition. You can draw multiple use cases in your mind when you insert the data into a generative AI app. You want to be sure that you're not copying anything sensitive. Yes, you would be sure, but what if accidentally you copy? Can't there be any guardrail? So that's the biggest risk that this research kind of surfaced out. The other is over-reliance and ethical concerns on AI output. The lot of leaders are also worried on inaccurate data. We've all heard about hallucination. Hallucination is one aspect. A similar aspect is, inaccurate data, and inaccuracy sometimes is a result of stale data and rotten data, which again causes dissatisfaction in adoption of AI and productivity that AI could deliver. The other is regulatory risk. That will be the top track of the session today, which is, hey, I've deployed this AI app. It's really cool, brings in a lot of productivity in my organization, but am I compliant? Am I in the EU AI guidelines or ISO guidelines, which is the topic that we go a little deeper. And the last is there are certain leaders also thinking, hey, I don't really want to deploy AI all up in production unless all these concerns are addressed. And that's the number 48% that you see below. Coming to regulations, while a lot of countries have come up with AI related regulations, but let me just quickly give you the top four. EU AI Act, which we will discuss today. So it probably is an act which will categorize AI systems into different models, and there would be systems in prohibited zone or model which you can't use. We'll cover more on that when I write Akash. Then we have NIST AIRMF. Now this comes up with the govern, map, measure, manage kind of a framework. And then we have ISO 42000 and ISO 23894, which again focuses on AI system, how it should be trained, and the later talks about how do you mitigate the potential risk and bias in safety. And I'll give you an example. Let's say I build an AI application which screens the candidate for a job position in my company. So instead of human screening the resumes, I now have an AI bot which will screen the resumes. It will screen the resumes, then for the shortlisted resumes, it will send an email to the prospective applicant that your resume is shortlisted. It will also schedule the interview with potential evaluators or potential interviewers. But guess what? If the AI goes rogue and if it could be a lot of things which are not right. It could it could go biased in shortlisting candidates. It could pick up candidates of a particular race, particular color, particular identity, particular nationality, which is what you don't want. It could also go by saying, oh, let this person interviewed with this person because of XYZ reasons, which again you could go by. So there are a lot of bias it could develop. How do you ensure that these biases don't creep into the systems that are supposed to learn on its own? Now, the good news is more of these, or I would say the four key top regulations are today available in Compliance Manager. Compliance Manager is part of your Purview tool. It's part of your E5 license. It's part of your IPG license or IPD license. It's part of the Purview family. It's called Purview Compliance Manager, and it has all these regulations like NI like ISO, like DPDP acts of various countries. Uh, Today, I'm pleased to share with you, in addition to the regulations it has, we have all the four top AI regulations already available in compliance as a premium template, which you can download and use. Now, let me invite Akash, who works closely with the Microsoft engineering team. He is also part of Ernst& Young, who's part of the Big Four consulting firms who do a lot of work on various regulations, including EU AI Act. So Akash, welcome. Why don't we listen into with you and from you on the EU AI Act before we dive into the product capabilities?
Sure, Ashish. Thank you for the generous introduction. So I'll start with the EU Act. So most of the regulations before the specifically focusing on the artificial intelligence. I think we have approximately 100 more than 140 countries which are talking about the personal data as well. So we have sectoral laws, we have country specific laws, we have regional laws around the data privacy. Given the scenario and the technology shift across the world, and now the things, the buzzword is AI. So also there is a lot of efforts which is going behind the screen on drafting such a comprehensive regulation. So specifically on the EU AI Act, it has came into the picture earlier as a part of a draft in the previous year, but it has been acted and I would say they applied from the August 2024. It became effective. So now my next, like the next thought process, like whom does it apply? Why should we concern? Where should we concern? So basically, it applies to all the entities across the world. And which entities? When I say the entities who are developing or placing their AI products in the market of EU, that's the point number one. Or if they are serving to the EU residents, that's the point number two. So if the users of the particular AI system, which is any natural or legal person or any public authority which belongs to the EU or resides in the EU, this act will applicable to them. Now, as a matter of fact, in terms of the stakeholders, basically the act has been laid down to three categories. Users, definitely the legal person who are consuming the AI application, or I would say utilizing the AI application. The next one is distributors and importers. So one who is distributing, normally the one who manufactures, the one who configures, the one who build the AI product, and the importers, one who purchases it. It also, along with the distributors, there is a subsection which is called the deploy for developers. So where we have laid down a specific set of guidelines for the developers while developing in AI systems, things which need to be kept in mind from a security perspective, from a privacy perspective. This act is also, a comprehensive, or I would say big amalgamation of data privacy and the security and AI. Now, the affected sectors, when we are talking about what are the affected sector, will it be finance, will it be healthcare? It will be affecting to all the sectors like healthcare, finance, transportation, education, where AI is being used. And even I would say the extraterritorial, this AI Act is not applicable as the name suggests. It is not applicable to the EU or European Union or European Economic Area. It is also applicable to those countries which I would say which are like developing the AI systems outside the EU region, but serving to the EU residents or I would say the EU companies. Now, what are the entities out of scope? Like they should be not that much bothered, I would say indirectly. In that case, the private and non-commercial use. For an example, if I'm developing any AI system from my private use, for an example, if I say, okay, I'm just developing my AI system just for my wedding, my personal, like whatever the organization or whatever the event which I'm organizing in my personal capacity, it won't be applicable to them until unless I'm drawing some of the information and which is getting utilized in the other system. So that's the one. On the public authorities in the non-EU countries, so AI systems which are developed or used by the public authorities or non-EU countries for the governmental purpose that are there. The last one, the second last one is the military application. Definitely, defense is a very critical sector in each and every area and in each and every country. So whatever the AI system which has been developed from the defense perspective or military perspective, that will be falling outside of the scope. And the last but not the least, that is the research and development. The any AI system which is developed for researching or testing or control the setting, like in a control settings, which they are definitely outside the obligatory obligations, I would say regulatory obligations. But keeping in mind, we have to be very transparent while utilizing or using such kind of AI systems. We can move to the next slide, Ashish.
Ashish, could you move to the next slide? Akash, are you still there?
Yeah, back. We had a glitch. Let me know if you can hear me back.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So we have Akash as well. So let's carry on. Sorry for that short glitch.
Okay, so as we already talked about the like the entities which is applied to and the affected parties. Also, what does it focus on? So basically, that's a human-centric AI system. So this particular act has been already classify the systems on the basis of the risk and when it will apply, as I already mentioned, it has been came into effect and enforced like from the 1st August of 2024. However, there as the I would say the on the risk wise, there are certain deadlines which has been decided by the regulation. It ranging from 6 months to 2 years, depending upon the category of the AI system which we are using currently. Now, why should we care? Definitely, that's the biggest. Since it's a regulatory requirement, it's not a standard, so it's not a good to have things. Yeah, until like for an example, if you are violating any of the, I would say the article or if any of the requirement of this particular act, the fines are very stringent and it's more than the GDPR. So the right now the fines can live up to the 30 million euros or the 6% of global annual turnover.
So Akash, what you're saying is the EU-AI Act is already in force, as it says 1st August, and most customers today would be going through the evaluation process of their AI apps. So there'll be a lot of AI apps which they're building. Some of them are not even built. They still have to go through this evaluation. And then if the AI app is of the category prohibited, then they have to decommission this in January. They can't go with this process, right? And if the AI app is in the other, if you could explain. So what are these categories?
So sure, Ashish. So here normally this act classify these set of AI systems into the three risk, I would say, that is prohibited, high risk, limited or minimal risk. Now in the prohibited risk, definitely there are the set of systems which has been already defined by the regulation. And one thing which I also wanted to highlight, the when the act came into force, like from the 1st of August 2024, it doesn't mean the AI system which has been developed prior to this particular date won't become under this purview. So whatever the application which has been developed and deployed in the market before August 2024, it will come under that this particular act purview. So we need to evaluate what kind of a AI system which we have deployed in the market. And if it is in the prohibited risk category, then we need to withdraw within the 6 months, which has been highlighted by the regulation. And the deadline would be the February, and we need to withdraw by the February 2025. That's the one. The another aspect on the basis of it, like there's a high risk, definitely for an example, AI system which is used in the biometric identification or credit scoring. Such kind of a AI system will consider as a high risk AI system. It is permitted, but subject to the various requirements, and I would say but subject to the various compliance or regulatory requirement of this particular act. Once you fulfill this, then you are good to go with this. The next one is limited risk. Nowadays, the chatbot, specifically the chat GPT, has created a revolution across the world. So chatbot, virtual agent, assistants, these kind of a things will come under the limited risk. This is all again is permitted. Howsoever, we need to be informed. We need to be make our practices very transparent. So which is already dealing with in form of the notice and consent, which we say. The next one is minimal or no risk. For an example, AI system which is using for entertainment, I would say the VFX or spell checkers, these kind of a thing. These are the AI systems which are permitted with the no restrictions.
So it's retrospective, is what you said. So even if you build AI system 6-8 months back before the law came into existence, it still applies to you. And if you have something which is categorized as prohibited, then you will have to kind of decommission that AI application by January. And yeah, so minimum no risk could be what we see in Netflix and movie recommendations and grammar. That continues.
Yes, yes. However, whenever that particular act won't, I would say, affect the decisions of the individual.
Got it. And mostly people were thinking there are no penalties, but what you're saying is the penalties are even more
than the
than the
GDPR.
GDPR. Okay, so that's good to know. Okay, thanks.
Now, in this particular, I just wanted to shed some light on the minimal risk system and prohibited risk system. So basically, minimal risk AI system, as we talked about earlier, it has been like, for an example, if AI system which is low risk, it is exempt from the EU AI Act regulations. That includes consumer electronics, entertainment acts, what we talked about Netflix just now. Chatbots and AI generated deep fake content also exempt, but subject to transparency and information. That is a one part.
So you're saying a lot of these applications which are low risk, they'll have to use consent and privacy and tell how the AI is actually churning data while the application could be low risk. So there would be a need to kind of do that part.
Definitely.
The AI provider.
Definitely. And
on the high risk?
Yes. On the high risk system, there's basically the act has been outlined the certain AI systems. For an example, AI systems which process biometric information. For an example, nowadays a lot of things like office punch-ins is going in the biometric.
Passports, airports. So a lot of those companies would fall into the biometric
use.
So they are categorized with the high risk system.
Definitely. One of the example which we came across, that is one of the large firm has they trained their biometric facial recognition system, but they have trained their AI model only on the I would say the people who has a fair tone of fair skin color. So the biometric system does not recognize the people who are from the like darker shades, or they have a I would say the Indian color, or I would say the black color in there.
So it's the induced bias. So you're giving it a data which itself is of one color, one race, one nationality, one set of pictures, one set of cars, whatever you're training. So it kind of creates a bias in the AI system. So the act has provisions to check that as well.
Yes, definitely. So we will just go in this. The next one is education for admission, grading, and monitoring the student behavior. As I already mentioned, any AI system which is impacting the children's behavior or which is forming a decision on their behavior, or on the basis of the grading, if we are deciding which class, which section they are getting into.
They're all in high risk.
They are all in high risk.
Got it.
Then the essential public services such as like social welfare, credit scoring. Like nowadays, in India particularly, we are evaluating the CIBIL score in order to give or decide the interest rate.
So most social networks will also fall in high risk?
Not exactly. Okay. Social networks, not exactly. Howsoever, they are on the limited risk, subject to they have made their privacy policies and contents to be very transparent. Now, AI use in the migration and the border control. Recently, this is a very hot topic, I think, looking at the scenarios across the world. So there's a lot of things where we are using AI system in order to migrate or in order to get them or granting a permission on basis of their
visa, border control, screening is where if you're using AI, you're in a high risk category. So you need to mitigate and go through the high risk.
Definitely. And managing the critical infrastructure such as energy, transportation, any AI system which outputs are using in these sectors, they are classified as a high risk AI system. As previously mentioned by you, Ashish, like AI system which is screening the human resumes, CVs. So these are, and law enforcement tools which are using in the judicial criminal investigations. These are the things which we are.
Are the penalties same for prohibited, high risk,
No.
low risk, or do they vary?
So they do vary. They do vary
So
depending upon.
the penalties vary.
Now, one thing is which I wanted to highlight, how to classify. Once you classify your AI system, the first step is to classify your AI system. Once you classify it, then for the high risk AI system, if you think, okay, these are the 8 sectors and my AI system are falling into this category, then what we need to do, we need to perform a conformity assessment. It's a kind of a risk assessment.
Okay.
The two approach has been outlined by the law. That is, first is there is a set of questionnaire which has been decided, and then it will be rolled out. That company can take the self-assessment, or other you can hire the accredited third parties who are authorized to perform the conformity assessment. So
got it. So anybody who has a system which is categorized in high risk across these 8 quadrants or 8 areas must do a conformity assessment. They can either do a self conformity assessment or they can hire a third party agency.
Yes,
and do it
before deploying the AI system into the market.
Okay.
That is the, so I have also highlighted the pre-market and the post-market. So the obligation on the pre-market, we have to manage our data very effectively. And like the model which we are training, the data on which we are training our model, keep technical records, ensure the transparency, and there should be a human in chain or human in command, some kind of a human oversight. And then obviously we need to maintain the accuracy.
So pre-market is a term in the law, but essentially it means before you go live with the service. So these are things you need to do.
You need to do for
and after you go live, then you have to register your AI application with the EU database. Okay.
And you need to conduct the post-market surveillance and update so that you will evaluate, okay, my AI system is behaving as expected. And we have to perform the new conformity assessment for the substantial modification. Any modification which is we are integrating in our current module, we need to perform conformity assessment.
So which means any changes you do, either on the data model or on the capability of the AI system, you again do a
conformity assessment before deploy into the production state.
Got it.
So the next one is the general purpose AI system. So now here we have 2 tiers. Like general purpose AI system is normally the AI system which has been trained on the large amount of data and in which we are supervising, self-supervising is there. So basically these are those AI system which keep the potential to bring or to give the input to the high risk AI system. So now for an example, if I deploy an AI system on my normal data set, I'll tell my AI system, okay, extract the valuable information, like what kind of a people which is there in the data system, and then putting into the high risk AI system.
So Akash, can I say we all use co-pilots and GPTs, so they'll become general purpose. And if I'm using them and extracting or generating some value, and then I'm kind of adding this to the other tools is when it presents a different way.
Yes. Okay. So the base level tier, which we already discussed, these are the AI system which are using in the I would say the deep fakes or some kind of like the model education model or something like the I would say the language transition. Definitely there would be a limited transparency and obligations apply where we need to be very consistent with the notice and consent. Systematic level tier, which is what we have already talked about. If the output is using as an input to the high risk AI system, that will classify as a systematic level tier.
Okay, so which means you could use a general purpose AI system, which is giving input to a high risk AI system. So what if your prompt is not correct? What if you're entering something which creates biasness in the high risk AI system? So you also have to be sure that your general purpose AI system or supply chain of the AI systems is also into the scope. And I do see the penalties dropping here from 6 to 3%. So that's what you said is the variable penalties.
So this is we have given the 12 months. to identify the GPI which is already there in the market and then perform or take the appropriate action as outlined with the law.
Got it. And I do see examples where, and a lot of the audience would also be curious, the audio deep fake. We all look at the news that there are some audio files that can be generated. So they are still part of the
General purpose AI, but we need to be make sure that we have a proper notice and consent. Okay, we are using this tool. This tool can be used as a deep fake so that the user will be aware about it.
Understood. And that's why most of these SaaS services are coming up with that kind of a consent,
Yes,
which they take and then they kind of force you to upload your voice and confirm that it's your voice before they create
yes.
it.
So that is there. Now we are moving to the next part, that is the compliance roadmap. So basically, this is where we are coming in, like what to do. Now the AI system, the act is in place. So the first of all, we have to identify our AI systems in the application. And then most of the, like when we are talking about the specifically the EU, the GDPR is also enacted in force in the year of 2018. So most of the countries and most of the organization have risk assessment, I would say, process in place, which is a DPIA process in place. So that is so we have to unify it by our AI assessment, a conformity assessment with the privacy assessment, so that parallelly we are evaluating a lot of privacy risk along with the AI risk. Then categorize those AI system basis on the output and basis on the nature of the AI system, and then document it to get compliant with the documentation level control, which has been highlighted by the regulation. And then for the general purpose AI, that is where our act is coming in, like develop transparency and information provision mechanism. Like privacy policy should be there, consent should be obtained, AI transparency mechanism, how the data is consumed by the model, where it will be used, how it will be used, these kind of things.
So there are controls within AI transparency, which we will see in the EU AI Act, and then you'll have to kind of upload evidences so that you're conforming to that control, in addition to the conformity assessment
yes,
that you do.
Okay. And then we need to implement a human oversight to evaluate the outcome. That should be in line with the expected behavior. If there is any deviation, then definitely.
And as I see the color coding, so the green is applicable specific to high risk.
Yeah.
If it's in high risk, then mandatorily.
Yes.
So today the law says if it's a high risk in those 8 categories, you must have a human oversight to it.
Yes.
Got it.
So that is what we are doing, like applicable to the general purpose AI, applicable to the minimal risk. You can see the red dot in only on the transparency and information provision mechanism. So we have a set of solution like Microsoft Purview solution, and you are the subject matter expert in this. So I think the compliance manager will help us to evaluate the compliance against the EU AI Act. Then the data classification and the AI have the combination of these two will help us to identify and classify the type of risk or type of the AI system which we are building and using. Then the data lifecycle management and the records management is the tool which is used for training our AI system on a right set of data and deleting the data that is there. And the Microsoft audit, once the high risk AI system has been deployed in the market, we need to like store the AI log system or the log system for the 6 months so that it can be audited. So that's where the Microsoft audit service which comes to in.
So sure. Thanks, Akash. I think real pleasure inviting you here, and thanks for kind of bringing that awareness of EU AI Act while we started with the compliance manager. And I shared with the audience that the compliance manager already has the EU AI regulation. Just going back on the compliance manager, the way we build the tool is to have intuitive management, kind of gamification, because it gives you a percentage score so that you know how much you're compliant. It also gives you multiple regulation, not just the EU AI, which Akash shared his views and how it's constructed with us, but also other regulation in a single view. And like I shared earlier, it has built-in capabilities to collaborate, audit, collect evidence. And now what I'll share with you is from a product team, what are some of the new regulations that we have recently released in the compliance manager? Some of them would be in the private preview. And what are the regulations which are coming up in Ignite, which is next month? So we do have, we have recently released the PDPA Act of Indonesia, we have EUAI Act and the NIST ISO 2 acts, which I shared earlier today in the compliance manager as part of the premium templates that you have. We also updated SOC 2 and Australian Privacy Act today. And coming up next month in Ignite is the much asked European Financial Regulation Act, DORA, NIST CSF 2.0. I'm also pleased to share with you that we're working and very close to releasing in private preview the Cloud Computing Regulation Act for Qatar. Now let me dive into what are some of the new features that we've released in Compliance Manager. The first one is we have brought in custom templates, and this is a feature wherein if you go into the regulations and search for regulations in the right library, you will see a new tab now. And yes, what you see on your screen is a new interface. This is the new Microsoft Purview portal that you will see. You have an option to switch back to the classic one. That's the name that we've given to the old one. But this, if you see, is a new interface, and this is how the compliance manager lights up in the new interface. And when you go into the regulation tab, you can see copy regulation as a button, wherein if you click on that, and if I select NIST, so in this case, I've selected NIST AI as a regulation, which I want to add certain controls, so I can copy this regulation. Once I copy this regulation, we have given you another button so that you can create a new control. We are in customization feature, which is a new feature which lets you add more controls to existing regulation. It also lets you add more actions to any specific control which is already there. And we have given this feature now in the UX so that you can go in the UX and add these controls easily. So I could just follow the UX, create a control, give it a name, control family, description, and here is voila, your demo control is there in the list of the controls of the existing template that you have. If I click on that particular control, it is but natural. You will need to create an action. We have both import actions plus a create action. I could create an action. I could give it a score. Pretty much you are aware of the scoring system that Compliance Manager has. And I could select a solution, click on the create button. It creates a control. Now, once you do this, please remember you have to publish the template before you use it. That's the button on the top right. Once you publish this template, it goes back into the library so that you can create a new assessment of that feature. So that's the feature number one, which was new, which is custom templates, which we've brought in back. The second is a new feature again, which we're calling it as a pre-deployment compliance. If you now go into your compliance manager, you would see these new class in the library, which is called subservice compliance readiness. So let me share with you what it is. Now, most organizations, before they choose to go on Azure, they want to be sure that Azure is compliant to either PCI or ISO 27001 because they have stringent regulations that they can only go to a cloud provider. And as long as the cloud provider confirms to NIST or PCI or ISO. So as of today, we have these 4 regulations which you can assess Azure as a service. So here we're talking of Azure as a service for a pre-deployment service readiness, which means before you choose Azure, you want to understand if it's compliant. You want to see if it's compliant by default. Do you need to make any changes? A lot of customers used to take weeks and months before they used to create a report. And that report used to say, yes, we as an organization can use Azure and Azure is compliant to PCI. As an organization, we can use ISO and it is compliant, and hence we can deploy a banking solution or payment solution. And that process used to take a lot of time. We have made that easy with this new feature. When you go to Compliance Manager, you don't have to create assessment because here what we are telling you is all the controls that Microsoft has already done for you. Either they are configured by default or you will need to take some steps and action to configure them. But it gives you a central repository so that you can go with confidence and check whether Azure meets PCI. If yes, how it meets. Do you need to do something on your part as the shared responsibility, or it's already pre-configured, pre-done it for you, and it gives you an option to also download a full report. So you could go and select a service, and we understand Azure as a computing environment has a lot of sub-services or a lot of options you can select. The terminology that we're using is a subservice. So you could select Azure as a subservice, then you could choose the subservice where you want to deploy your application. Like I said, it's a kind of a pre-deployment, or you could say pre-sales, or you could say pre-purchase, whatever is the best terminology. You just want a assurance that Azure meets the PCI needs or ISO needs. And in Azure, we have given you the subservice. You could select a subservice, and in this case, I've selected Kubernetes service. And what happens below is we give you a list of all the controls which for a Kubernetes services are applicable for PCI or ISO, the regulation that you've selected. In this case, I've selected ISO 27001. And then you can click and see, okay, if it is AKS, if it's this policy or access control as part of ISO, what has Microsoft done? And you can browse, and you could kind of click on like Azure RBAC. So we will tell you that, look, this is a feature, this is what ISO expects, this feature is supported. Is it enabled by default? No, you'll need to make some changes to enable. So we're giving you all the guidance, we're giving you all the information, we're giving you every place to go and change in one single unified view. And all of this information now it'll start flowing out from Compliance Manager itself so that you can use it as a single tool, not for your regulations alone, but also if you want to assess it for any pre-deployment. And here is what I shared with you. You could export this as a CSV or JSON as part of the what you could say conformity that the service that you're choosing, the sub-service that you're choosing meets the requirement that your organization expected. So that's a new service. We're also coming up with a blueprint. This again is in private preview. We've not released it yet, but we do plan to release it by Ignite time. So we would be sharing with you blueprints, not just for Compliance Manager. We're building blueprints for MIP. We're building blueprints for Insider Risk. We're building blueprints for DLM and RM and Compliance Manager and Audit as a Service, pretty much for the entire Purview family. And the way to read blueprint is if you start with the service, what would be a maturity level? As you go on the right hand side, you're maturing more onto the right hand side. So achieving compliance, assessing risk, mitigating risk, compliance supporting evidence. So as you go on the right hand side, you kind of mature, and it just tells you what kind of capabilities you need to enable in Compliance Manager to be on the highest maturity. Quickly on the roadmap, while we have another 8 minutes. So one compliance is what I shared with you. We would be coming up with Ignite with more information on the dates, Excel export. I've already shared that with you on one compliance. We are, as I shared with you, EU AI, ISO 42000, we're taking to GA. You already see them either in a private or a public preview in your current tenant. Custom templates is already in a private preview, and you would see a lot of chatter on the channels. We're planning to go to GA by Ignite. Now, what I share with you, as you see the disclaimer on the screen below, these are things that we're putting our head on further building on custom template features so that we could give you ways to create new templates from scratch rather than picking from the library. We are also looking at bulk upload process so that your existing Excel or export of some tools can be ingested in Compliance Manager. We're also looking at versioning of the regulations and versions of actions and assessment that you have taken so that there is a snapshot of the state of compliance that you have. So those are things which are top of the mind for the team here as they're building, in addition to also having the graph API enablement so that you can build your own applications around it. So with that, I really thank you for listening in, and let's use the time that we have to answer your questions. So David, Jason, happy if you can roll through the questions, and we'd love to answer them.
Sure, yeah. Thank you so much. The first question we have is, what are the areas of the EU AI Act that are pertinent to data protection and data residency topics?
Okay, can you repeat? So what are the sections? So are you looking at the laws or are you looking at a broad data? If you can repeat the question.
Yeah. What are the areas of the EU AI Act that are pertinent to data protection and data residency topics?
Got it. So I'll give a reflection, then I'll invite Akash. Look, the EU AI Act is telling you what to do if your AI application falls into high risk or medium risk. Let's not talk of probatory. Now, for an AI application falling into any of these categories, it is learning from the data. Now, if it's learning from the data, is it learning from the right data set or is it learning from the wrong data set? So the expectation from a data protection would be that the AI application should not go and read the data which is private, read the data which there was no consent for, should be able to go and read only the data which is provided. And yes, a lot of responsibility of having fairness in data resides with the data provider. And if you are both the data creator, data owner, and data provider for the training of AI, then the data protection guardrails you have to build is ensuring non-consent data is not read, ensuring any confidential data is not read by the AI application to get trained on. Anything you want to add, Akash?
Yes, one thing on the data localization. So whatever the applications and whatever the AI system which we are using and it is used by the EU resident, already there is a data localization requirement highlighted in the GDPR. So data should reside in the EU. If the data is moving out of the EU for better consumption or the another set of consumption, definitely we have a binding corporate regulation and FCC in place, which we need to take care of in forms of contract. So that is there. So these are the two overlapping areas, and needless to say, this act should be read along with the other sectoral laws and the privacy laws. So
in country and GDPR.
In country
and
and
GDPR. Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks. The next question is, do you have recommendations for Purview, especially if you are using Databricks?
Okay, so do we have recommendations for Purview? Look, when it comes to compliance manager, this tooling is independent of what you use. So if you have Databricks and the Databricks you're using, I'm assuming you're using for data governance of structured data, then a lot of metadata would be getting churned and policies made in Databricks. In that case, if you're using Compliance Manager and using EUAI template and in Compliance Manager, and in EUAI, you have to confirm as part of conformity assessment or as part of any control to which you submit an evidence. You can always say, I am using the tool which is Snowflake. I'm using the tool which is Databricks. The Databricks gives me this information. I have this policy, like the previous question. If you are building certain rules which will create guardrail for any AI application to read data, and that guardrail is built within policies of Databricks or ingesting data there, then you'll have to create that policy. And in the compliance manager tool, you'll have to say, yes, I have built necessary guardrails. Here is the policy length, which is what I've done. So the compliance manager and EUAI doesn't bind you to any product, but what compliance manager also allows you is to submit an evidence of any Microsoft or non-Microsoft product.
Great, thank you. The next question is Purview only a nice to have or mandatory to be compliant in Germany?
Excellent question. See, Purview is a tool that helps you get compliant, and the Purview family, one of the tool also gives you interpreted regulation, and the entire compliance journey can be made easy. It's not mandatory, it's good to have.
Great, thank you. The next question is, for high risk categories, for example, facial recognition on CCTV, obligation lies with the vendor who builds that, or does it lie with the enterprise that is using it?
So the obligations lies with the both. The first is the vendor. So definitely on the vendor who is building it, he need to be ensure whatever the model which is training that should be accurate and that should not be biased. However, the lot of I would say the obligation would be on the how you gonna use your system.
The penalty is
The penalty would be on the owner.
The penalty is with the
Like
owner.
who is using the system. So the thing is, if you are using the biometric identification from the CCTV, normal CCTV monitoring, so it will consider as a prohibited risk AI system. And here, in case you don't need anything, you need to just simply withdraw the AI system. If you are failing to do so, then you are getting penalized.
So the airport owns the system and they delegate that to a vendor. The responsibility is still with the airport, which owns the system. So the penalty goes to the owner of the system.
Yes, yes. And also, if it is the vendor is there, for an example, if I'm selling my biometric system to a vendor, then vendor should specifically comes out and allowed, okay, why it is going to be used, how it is going to be used, and for which reason. Again, having said that, if we are using the biometric system for the military purpose, it is excluded. If we are using it for determining a set of, okay, what kind of origin of people who are traveling most in this particular area, these kind of a thing, then we need to be very careful. It will be considered as a high risk AI system and we cannot monitor the behavior. If we are monitoring the behavior, that it would be prohibited.
Got it. And still the ownership is
Yes.
the owner of the
Yes.
system. Okay.
Great, thanks. The next question is, does this Purview template cover Azure as well as M365 and other platforms?
So the Purview template that we showed you in Compliance Manager for EU AI covers M365 today. If you have to cover non-M365, then you can use customization. You can cover Salesforce, SAP, mobile application, core banking system, but all of that would require you to create a custom template and then key in the action. Out of the box, it only covers M365.
Great. The next question is, does the scope of discussion cover Microsoft Copilot or any available AI tool?
Okay, see, we discussed EU AI and how can you get compliant with EU AI using Compliance Manager. If you are taking Copilot, let's say a M365 Copilot, then I would suggest you to leverage AI Hub. AI Hub is a new service, and you can follow up on the security community when we have the webinar for AI Hub, or look at Ignite, where we will be releasing information on AI Hub. AI Hub is a place which will guide you to be compliant on EU AI and some of the other acts when you're deploying M365 Copilot or other Microsoft Copilots. It'll also work with Defender so that you can visualize the third-party AI systems, whether it is Bard or ChatGPT or the Bing Copilot, which for us is a consumer part. So do look for the AI Hub webinar and more information on Ignite. That's where it will help you as a tooling engine.
Great. And the last question we have is, medical diagnosis systems has been put under general purpose AI. Could you please explain?
Yes. So whenever I'm using a particular AI model for an, as I rightly mentioned, like for an example, if it's an AI system which only extract the information from the database, so it's a general purpose AI system. Now, if I'm using or feeding this particular data, if I'm putting or feeding a like a medical database or insurance database of the patients to a AI system, and it is getting trained on the like calculate premium and all,
then
so
it becomes high risk.
Yes, then it will become a high risk. If the output, for an example,
general purpose AI system, the output of general purpose AI system is feeding into the high risk to calculate the insurance premium and all, then it will become a high risk, or then it will become a, I would say, comes under the purview of additional obligation. Else, if we are using only to determine to help to categorize, then it would be general purpose. So it depends upon how you use the system.
Great. That seems to be all the questions we have. So with that, I'd like to thank you, Ashish and Akash, for being our guests and for sharing the great information with our community. Also, thank you to the Q&A team who helped us with answering the questions and providing the resourceful information. To all the listeners still on the line, if you're someone who wishes to aid in the protection of the world from cyber threats and desire to have a say in shaping our strategies, blueprints, and recommendations, then we invite you to become part of our security community. Together, we can make a global impact. So join us at aka.ms/security community. This is also where you'll be notified about the upcoming webinars, events, and other announcements. For those of you who may have additional questions on the topic we just covered or other product-related questions, please feel free to raise them on our Microsoft Tech Community discussion space at aka.ms/Azure Purview Community. Thank you all for being part of our community and for joining us on these webinars. We hope to see you next time. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for attending. Thanks, Jason, David.